Happy to have with us on the show this morning our good friend Robert Weiner from Robert Weiner Associates in D.C., former Chief of Staff on the House Aging Committee, senior staff to Congressman Claude Pepper, formerly the late Claude Pepper of Florida, Ted Kennedy, John Conyers, among others, former Staff Director, Select Committee on Aging in the House, Staff Director of the Subcommittee on Health and Long-Term Care, and President of Robert Weiner Associates Public Affairs and Issue Strategies. Hi, Bob.
Dave, okay, we're done after that intro. Thank you
very much. Did I leave anything
out?
I think I forgot your inseam size. I think that's the only thing I didn't get there. Now, yesterday, I'm watching the press briefing. Before we get to health care, I'm watching the press briefing, and there was this rather testy exchange between a reporter and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was conducting the briefing. And I watched the guy going back and forth with her, and there you are standing right next to him. Tell me, how mad was this reporter?
Brian, who writes for the Sentinel papers of Maryland, and is a friend, that's why we sort of stand together sometimes at the press briefing, is one of the most straightforward, honest people I know, and he just couldn't take it anymore with the assertions of fake news against the media. And, when you think that Trump has in his golf courses this fake cover of Time magazine with him on it before he ever ran for president, and Time now is demanding that he take it down. It never happened. Brian was outraged on behalf of the media, and then he got on Hardball and Morning Joe today, and I mean, suddenly he has become the spokesman for honesty and truth for the American people, and I think it's very courageous what he did, because when you're in those press briefings, you want to be called on. He didn't wait; he just put himself out there. He put it out there and put it out there, and then finally other reporters said at the briefing, "Now let's get to Brian's question." And it made Sarah Huckabee Sanders answer to the making the media, which is trying to find out the truth for the American people on things, the enemy, and it made her answer to that. Yeah. And it might just slow the administration down on doing that kind of thing.
Well, he did look like he blew a gasket yesterday. There was no doubt about it. Now, let's talk about health care for a minute. You and I were chatting yesterday morning before the announcement that they were going to pull the bill and take it up again after the July 4th break. And your speculation, which I agreed with you, was what?
I told you then that he didn't have the votes. There were 4 precisely, and now it comes out there's between 5 and 11 people against it. So, before I did your show, Dave, the reason that your producer didn't find me 3 minutes ago was I went out for a run to clear my head, and it just has come to me as someone who's worked on the Hill, and then you mentioned I worked for the great Claude Pepper as his chief of staff for the Aging Committee and the Health Subcommittee, and I was a spokesman for the White House Drug Office. I've put this thing together, and the compromise that's being threatened should be taken up by people. When Senator Johnson this morning said, maybe we have to take the Democrats' offer and work together to create something. When Trump says, maybe we'll have to work with the Democrats. And others have said, Manchin of the Democratic side said, let's work together with the Republicans. That's the only way, and Scarborough said this morning that we'll never pass this without Democratic support. Why not do what the Senate is famous for and deal with the issues that are problematic in health care that Democrats have admitted for some time? Just don't call it repeal and replace, and call it repair. And we can actually get something very positive done. And I think that may be where we go with this, Dave. And I know your listeners want to hear that, because Florida has the highest percentage of seniors in the country, and the bill that quintuples the cost to seniors, and that takes away the opportunity for grandma to be in a nursing home under Medicaid, and takes away, and even seniors now have opioid pain-killing addictions, and that has quadrupled in the last 2 decades, and they've pulled that out of the current bill. Those are things that have to go in. You can't take 15 million people off Medicaid. You cannot do that. And the reason the system is collapsing is because Congress has refused to do what we did for Bush's Part D Medicare, and when there were fixes needed, we bipartisan basis fixed it and put in a little bit of money. And even Trump has said, put some money and heart into this thing. So the threat of McConnell that if you don't get this together, I'll have to work with Schumer, that's where we're going. Those threats are actually the answer.
Well,
and so that is what's going to happen in my view now, is there has to be a compromise.
Well, I believe all along that that you need to have, you have a two-party system for a reason, and you have to bring everybody to the table who's a stakeholder, and just to pretend that 50% of the people of the United States, who are represented by roughly 50% of the representatives in the Senate, are to be ignored is certainly a slap in their face. Plus, you have this whole sort of thing of the Democrats pass Obamacare with no help from Republicans, then the Republicans get in power and they pass their version of whatever it's going to be, and then when the Democrats get in power, they'll change it again, and you can't get anything done unless you have both parties at the table. I think you're exactly right, and it's too bad, isn't it, that compromise and collaboration have become dirty words.
Well, yes, but you're not quite right, and this is one of those myths that Obama didn't reach out. You're not supposed to tell the host that he's wrong. But go ahead. There were 160 amendments that were adopted on tax breaks and things that Democrats weren't prone to do, that were put into Obamacare. Obama had massive meetings at the White House, bringing in the Republican leadership. There were 100 days of hearings. 100 days of hearings. This time there were none. It was done in secret totally, and there was no involvement whatsoever of the Democratic Party. So of course you're not going to get any Democratic support. There was subtle and people off to the side violating the rules of saying they really want this bill to pass on the Republican side, and that's why it wasn't quite as violent last time when Obamacare passed. And Obamacare did pass, and there weren't sit-ins by the Republicans blocking the bills from passing. Democrats are really furious because complete exclusion and putting this thing together in 5 days in secret with 12 guys, not even any of the women, far be it for, Planned Parenthood to be a part of anything, was really an outrageous process. Well, so it looks like it's coming together under duress. That's what seems to be happening now.
So what is your prediction after the July 4th break? Do you think that you'll see more members of the other party involved in the process?
Well, there has to be, because Portman and Collins came out after the bill was pulled. There was an addition. Now we're going into the town meeting phase and the meet your constituency, which is what McConnell was trying to avoid at all costs. He was trying to keep this thing totally secret, dark, and quick. And now it's going to go out there. You have disabled people lying in the offices in their, putting their wheelchairs down flat. You have people in stretchers. You have mothers whose kids will die if they don't get their child cancer treatments. You've got such disasters going on. Did you know, Dave, that 49%, I didn't know this until, it came out a week ago, 49% of births in America are Medicaid.
Yeah,
49%.
You told me that yesterday, and it's a shocking number if you think about it.
So what are they doing here? And you cannot do what they're doing here is the answer. You just can't pull that kind of... Health is life. Health is life. And they are literally, all the studies, the Harvard study, you take away people's health insurance. And by the way, if you take away people's health insurance, you are taking away what really is important to them.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about this, and Paul Ryan yesterday in his press conference said, we need to understand where these 22 million people that are going to be off the health insurance rolls come from, and he made what I think is a relatively decent point, and that is that a lot of these are people who are forced to buy health insurance now who won't be forced to buy it going forward. So
that is one of the things that can be in the solution.
Yeah.
In addition to assuring that the Medicaid expansion continues, that subsidies get put in to fix the exchanges, that seniors don't pay 5 times as much, that opioid treatment is there, they could, as part of the compromise, take away the mandate and do everything else. It would not be a killer, and that would satisfy the Republicans that this is still voluntary market-driven, but it would have all the benefits of the bill. That is one of the possible compromises if they'd be willing to sit at the table with Democrats and do that. Howard Dean said some time ago, years ago, when Obamacare was in the making, that, the mandate is not something that's a killer provision of the bill. We've played it that way, but it really isn't.
Well, we'll see. Time will tell. We'll see if when Congress gets back into session after their break, they can put their heads together as we've seen happen in the Reagan administration and other administrations with the other side, and try to get a compromise put together. Bob, it's always a pleasure to have you on with me.
Can I make one more point?
Yes, please.
That they emphasize the savings of $321 billion. Of course there are savings when you cut and don't provide the benefits and don't give the health care.
Right.
That savings is a myth. It just means people not getting health insurance. So when you hear savings, think reduce benefits and reduce care.
All right, all good stuff. I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, Bob.
Yep, right.
Bob Weiner from Robert Weiner and Associates in D.C. He was standing there right next to that reporter who went off on Sarah Huckabee Sanders yesterday about fake news, and he has been invited to almost all the press briefings in the White House. You can tell he's a partisan, but he nonetheless is invited, and he asks thoughtful questions and gets his answers usually. It's 8:20. We're live at Shula Steakhouse, and we'll be right back.